Okay, it's the day before Thanksgiving, November 26th, 2008. Um, many things on my mind, let's focus here, which is not easy to do with everything that's going on. But so much has happened this week. It's amazing. So, thinking about a lot of things. Citi, primarily, I've been watching the Citi situation. What, 306, $310 billion. So I started watching that, and it was very interesting because Gary Crittenden, who's the CFO of Citigroup, um, I know him a little bit. I used to see him at church. I think it was in Boston, back in Belmont. Could have been in Los Altos, but I remember his smiling face. He has a big grin. Um, seems like a very nice guy. He's aged a tiny bit, but after having a weekend negotiating a $310 billion bailout, I was really impressed with how good he looked in the interviews. So I watched him on CNBC in the morning. It's before the markets opened, and I was grateful for the interview. Interesting to watch. I'm very competent, explaining the situation and interviewed on the early CNBC program. Um, 20 billion injected immediately, and he was very articulate in laying out the Citi strategy. Um, they have 2.3 trillion in assets, and it was just very interesting to see that the government in the deal is going to fix the dividend at $1 a share for the next 3 years. Also, very interesting that Citi will have warrants at $10.61 a share if they pull this off. Right off the hand by reading Gary. And the other things, I think Citi's not going to fail. I think it's one of the chosen ones to continue onward. That brings me to the two collapse scenario. We've already collapsed economically. Just think if the government wasn't extracting money or printing money or creating money out of thin air with the Federal Reserve, how the economy would look right now. They've injected, you've probably seen the number, $7 trillion into trying to fix this economy, and still, just watch this Christmas, watch consumers, watch what's going on. So much to talk about, but I picked up USA Today real quick. Fed adds 800 billion this week. Okay, 800 billion, and then you look kind of at the bottom of, read USA Today if you can grab it. Food banks can't meet demand. Okay, a lot of you know that I've been talking about food storage and things like that. So food banks can't meet demand. So some people are going hungry right now. That's why food is more important than gold and silver or fancy clothes or anything else like that. Food is essential. Now, a lot of people, I think that there's two collapses, which I'm going to have to make a whole video or several videos on two collapses. The first one's happened. The U.S. system is finished. We're moving into central planning, and it's being propped up artificially now. Of course it is. It still seems normal to most people, but for finance people, it's not normal anymore. It's not normal anymore. In fact, there should be a little bit of righteous indignation or a tremendous amount going on right now. So I watched the Citi thing, and my read of Citi's not going to fail. I think it'll actually be a good investment for a lot of reasons, but particularly that they're one of the chosen ones not to fail. I continued watching Gary, and then I had to stay tuned for Your Highness, largest shareholder of Citi, and that was very interesting and should be very enlightening. And I think in some ways CNBC or whoever programmed it was throwing it in our faces, because there was Maria Bartiromo interviewing Prince Al-Walid bin Talal Al Saud of the Kingdom Holding Company, with beautiful Arabian horses behind him, dressed up in probably very expensive clothes, with a stable of gorgeous, probably ultra expensive horses behind him. Now, he's the largest shareholder of Citi, and he's being bailed out. So you, the American taxpayer, the person that's working, putting in a little overtime, working hard to put food on the table, maybe losing your car, losing your house, you are bailing out that guy. Okay, I guess he can't sell a few Arabian horses or something like that, but you are bailing out that guy, who Maria calls Your Highness. That's indicative of where our Constitution stands. Okay, that is indicative of where our Constitution stands. These are big things going on. Think about that. Try to watch that interview. That was amazing. I just thought, wow, talk about throwing it in the faces of the U.S. worker, bailing out the Saudi prince with Arabian horses in the background, no less. Okay, reminds me of another class I had at Harvard, which I haven't talked about because I failed it. I looped it. I got a category 3. I still remember it vividly. I was all excited to get into a class called Managing Change. It's an organizational behavior class. We had one of the kind of semi-star hotshot professors, a guy named Todd Jick, J-I-C-K. And I remember they went around the class. Why are people taking classes? Well, this and that. The S&L crisis was a big thing back then in Japan at 40,000. Japan being 7 of the 10 largest banks on earth by assets, and we were studying Japan as the model economy to follow. Factories that would operate completely in the dark, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember they went around the room, people said things, and it came to me, and I said, I took this class because I'm going to watch, or I'm very interested in managing the change of this society after it collapses into a new society. And I remember Professor Jick looked up at me and thought, oh gosh, this guy's out of it. And a lot of students looked at me like, what are you doing here? What are you doing in this class? And I knew immediately then that I didn't fit in. I didn't fit in for the big picture managing change for what's happening now. It was not macroeconomics. This was microeconomics. This company, this industry, global, not global, but not a big picture thing like this. So I've been interested in this for 20 years. I'm kind of glad that Todd Jick isn't the dean of Harvard Business School now. My old finance professor, Jay Lights, dean of the Harvard Business School. God bless that man. I remember driving down Storrow Drive in my 733 with "That's abolished the Federal Reserve" sticker in 1977. He kind of chuckled, and we even mentioned it to me. We talked about it a little bit. But that's the thing I appreciate about Harvard. I realized that I wasn't in agreement with all the viewpoints of some of the founders of Harvard Business School, which largely was funded by international bankers. But the chance to exchange intellectual ideas, moral ideas, with my professors was fantastic. But I flunked category 3, looped, to use the Harvard Business School lingo, Todd Jick's Managing Change class because I was too far out there. Now, obviously, I feel it's very relevant, and Obama and his team are trying to manage change, but all these things are fixed. They're so huge. $7 trillion is a huge, huge number. So it's going to require further explanation, but I look at these headlines, okay? Fed adds $800 billion, and food banks are running low on food. So these billions and billions of dollars obviously there's people hungry here in the United States. So think about that one. Think about that one. And it's all this thing to provide credit so people will shop. Well, what about if people could just work and buy stuff without credit? Do you have to have debt to function as an economy? Of course you don't. But everybody's conditioned to think you do here in this country. So, well, now there is change management, but what's going to happen is people in Washington, our politicians, are trying to manage it on a national level and brought in Volcker. Like I said, that deflation video that I made a couple times ago is going to become very relevant. The Dow is almost not relevant, but the deflation video is very relevant. We're going to see that for you, the American, I don't even want to say consumer, the American people, most people. You're in trouble. Gary, I was reading into what Gary said. He said they're limiting exposure to the U.S. consumer. I thought, wow, that's really relevant, and that Citigroup is targeting high net worth individuals in many countries to basically fund their deposit base. So Citi sees that the U.S. consumer's dead, finished, and going to be wiped out, and you'll see that unfold over the next 6 months. But there's some rich guys overseas, and I guess we bailed one out. We bailed one out. Prince Al-Walid of Saudi Arabia. Amazing, but true. I would try to watch that interview and contemplate that one. You're going to be involved in a very, very local economy within the next 36 months. Prepare accordingly. God bless. Ciao. This is MOT, Man of Truth.